The morning sun rose over the city of Haven, the capital of New Providence. It was a beautiful world. Green forests covered the mountains. Blue rivers cut through wide valleys. 12 million humans called this planet home. They had built farms and schools and hospitals. Children played in parks while their parents worked. It was a peaceful life, far from Earth. Under an alien sky. Commander Sarah Chun stood on the balcony of the defense headquarters drinking her morning coffee. She was 34 years old, with short black hair and tired eyes. She had served in the Colonial Defense Force for 10 years, but nothing ever happened on New Providence. The biggest emergency she had faced was a forest fire 2 years ago. She often joked that her job was the most boring in the galaxy. That joke died at 9:47. In the morning, the alarm screamed across every city on the planet. Sarah dropped her coffee and ran to the command center. Officers were shouting and pointing at screens. She pushed through them and looked up at the main display. Her blood turned to ice. 40 ships hung in orbit above New Providence. They were massive, each one several kilometers long. Their hulls were dark purple, covered in strange symbols. They did not match any design in human records. They had appeared from nowhere, dropping out of hyperspace without any warning. "What are they?" Sarah asked. "Unknown, Commander," a young officer replied. His voice was shaking. "They are not responding to any communication. We have tried every frequency, every language we know." Sarah watched the alien ships on the screen. They moved into formation with perfect coordination, spreading out to cover the entire planet. She had trained for first contact scenarios. Every officer had. But those scenarios involved talking, negotiating, learning about each other. These ships were not here to talk. "Power up the planetary shields," she ordered. "Get me a line to Earth, now." The shields flickered to life across the planet, a thin blue energy barrier that protected the major cities. Sarah knew they were not strong enough. New Providence was a farming colony, not a military base. Their shields could stop asteroids and solar radiation. They were never designed to stop a war fleet. The first plasma bolt fell at 10:15. It struck the shield, above Haven with the force of a nuclear bomb. The barrier held for 3 seconds before it shattered like glass. The bolt continued down and hit the Eastern District. 20,000 people died in that single moment. Buildings turned to vapor. Streets melted into rivers of glass. Sarah grabbed the communication console. "Earth, Earth, this is New Providence. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack by unknown alien forces. 40 warships. They are bombarding the planet." More bolts fell. The sky turned orange with fire. The ground shook so hard that Sarah fell to her knees. Through the window, she could see Haven burning. Towers collapsed. People ran screaming through streets that were turning to ash beneath their feet. Far above, on the bridge of the lead alien warship, Admiral Kethforum watched the destruction with cold, yellow eyes. He was Volanthi, a reptilian species that had ruled this region of the galaxy for 30,000 years. His scales were dark green, and his uniform carried the symbols of 100 successful purifications. "Status report," he said calmly. "Planetary defenses are failing." Admiral, his second officer, reported. "Estimated time to complete sterilization, 6 hours. Acceptable. Continue bombardment." Kethforn felt nothing as he watched millions die. The Volanthi had encountered many young species in their long history. They had a simple policy. Species that might one day challenge the Dominion were eliminated before they could grow strong. These humans had spread to 17 worlds. They were building ships. They were expanding. In 1,000 years, they might become a threat. Better to burn them now while they were still weak on the surface. Sarah Chun crawled through the ruins of her command center. Most of her officers were dead. The ceiling had collapsed, and fires burned everywhere. She found one working console and pulled herself up to it. Blood ran down her face from a wound on her head. The courier drone. She had to launch the courier drone. Her fingers moved across the controls. She uploaded everything's sensor data. Recordings of the attack. Images of the alien ships. If Earth never learned what happened here, humanity would be blind when these monsters came for other worlds. "Come on," she whispered. "Come on." The upload completed. She launched the drone. On the screen, she watched it streak away from the planet, entering hyperspace before the alien ships could stop it. A small victory, but it was something that another plasma bolt hit nearby. The floor cracked beneath her feet. Sarah Chun, commander of the New Providence Defense Force, looked out at the burning sky and spoke her last words into the communication system. "Tell Earth. Tell them everything. And make them pay." The bolt struck the command center directly. Sarah Chun and her final message became ash. 6 hours later, the bombardment stopped. Admiral Caththorne looked down at what remained of New Providence. The forests were gone. The rivers had boiled away. The cities were nothing but craters of molten glass. Not a single living thing remained on the surface. "Purification complete," his officer announced. "Good. Set course for home. File the standard report. New species encountered in Sector 7G. Threat level: minimal. Status: eliminated." The 40 ships turned and vanished into hyperspace. They left behind a dead world and 12 million corpses. 14 days later, a small drone dropped out of hyperspace near Earth. Defense satellites detected it and sent ships to investigate. When they found the colonial markings, they brought it straight to Geneva. In a bunker deep beneath the city, the United Earth Council gathered. President General Marcus Webb stood at the center of the room. He was 60 years old, with gray hair and a face marked by the scars of Earth's last civil war. He had seen terrible things in his life, but nothing prepared him for what played on the screen before him. They watched Haven burn. They heard Sarah Chun's final message. They saw 12 million people die in 6 hours, killed by aliens who never even tried to speak to them. When the recording ended, the room was silent. Some council members were crying. Others sat in shock, unable to process what they had witnessed. President General Webb stood completely still. His hands were clenched at his sides. His jaw was tight. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, but every person in that room heard him clearly. "Find out who they are." He turned to face the council. His eyes were not filled with grief or fear. They were filled with something much more dangerous. Something cold and patient and absolutely certain. "Find out who they are," he repeated. "And then we will make them pay." Humanity had received its first message from the stars. It was written in fire and death. Now, they would write their reply. The galaxy expected humanity to panic. The galaxy expected humans to scream into the void, demanding answers, begging for mercy, or threatening revenge they could never deliver. The Volanti Dominion had seen it many times before. Young species always reacted the same way when they first tasted real power. But humanity did something different. Humanity went quiet. In the weeks after the attack, Earth's radio signals dropped by 90%. Colony worlds stopped expanding. Human ships stayed close to home. To outside observers, it looked like a species in shock, retreating into itself, preparing to die. The Volanthi High Command noted this with satisfaction. "The humans are contained," they wrote in their official report. "Probable extinction within 3 generations due to psychological trauma and loss of colonial momentum. No further action required." They could not have been more wrong. Behind the silence, Earth was transforming. Every government on the planet dissolved in a single night. There was no debate. There was no resistance. When the people of Earth saw the recording of New Providence burning, when they heard Sarah Chun's final words, they understood that the old divisions no longer mattered. Nations, religions, political parties, all of it became meaningless in the face of what the universe had shown them. The United Earth Council became the United Earth Command. President General Marcus Webb stood before the people and spoke simply. We are no longer alone in the universe, and the universe wants us dead. We have two choices. We can wait for them to come and finish us, or we can make sure they never threaten us again. I know which choice I am making. If you stand with me, then from this day forward, we have only one purpose. Every factory on Earth converted to military production. Every shipyard began building warships. Every university turned its research toward weapons, shields, and engines. Mining operations in the asteroid belt increased by 400%. The moon became a massive construction platform. Mars became a training ground. Dr. Yuki Tanaka led the most important project. She was a physicist, 42 years old, and she had lost her brother on New Providence. When she received the sensor data from Sarah Chun's courier drone, she did not cry. She went to work. For 3 years, she studied the alien weapon signatures. She learned how their plasma cannons worked. She understood their shield technology. Then she began to improve on it. Human scientists had always been good at taking things apart and making them better. Within 5 years, Earth's prototype weapons were 30% more powerful than the alien originals. They gave us a gift, Tanaka said to her team. They showed us what was possible. Now we will show them what humans do with gifts. On the 16 surviving colony worlds, a new generation grew up. These children never knew the innocent days before the attack. Their schools taught them history, science, mathematics, and the names of the 12 million dead. Every child could recite those names by heart. Every child understood what had been taken from them. Chen Weilin was 25 years old when New Providence burned. Sarah Chen had been his older sister. He had worshipped her since childhood, following her into the military, hoping to serve beside her someday. When he learned she was dead, something broke inside him. Something else grew in its place. He rose through the ranks faster than anyone in history. He studied every battle humanity had ever fought, then studied alien tactics captured from intercepted signals. He ran thousands of simulations against imaginary enemies, testing strategies, finding weaknesses. When the United Earth Command created the position of Supreme Commander of the Retribution Fleet, there was only one candidate. You understand what we are building, President General Webb said to him on the day of his appointment. Yes, sir. We are building an answer. We are building 500,000 answers. Can you command them? Chen Weilin thought of his sister. He thought of 12 million people who never had a chance to fight back. He thought of aliens who killed without warning, without mercy, without even curiosity about who they were destroying. I can command them, he said, and I can make sure every ship knows exactly why we are going. The shipyards worked in secret, hidden in asteroid fields and behind gas giants. Human engineers solved problems that had stopped other species for centuries. They built reactors that produced 10 times more power. They designed hulls that could absorb punishment that would vaporize alien ships. They created weapons that made the Volanti plasma cannons look like toys. Most importantly, they built in numbers that no one in the galaxy thought possible. The Volanti Navy had 80,000 ships. They had ruled their region of space for 30,000 years, and 80,000 ships had always been enough. No species had ever come close to matching them. By 2355, humanity had 200,000 warships. By 2356, they had 350,000. By 2357, the count reached 500,000, and these were not small patrol boats or light frigates. These were battle cruisers and dreadnoughts, heavy assault carriers and siege platforms. Each one was crewed by men and women who had grown up memorizing the names of the dead. 10 years of silence. 10 years of building. 10 years of waiting. On the morning of the launch, Admiral Chen Wei-lin stood on the bridge of the U.S. Remembrance. It was the largest warship humanity had ever built, 3 kilometers long, carrying enough firepower to crack a planet. Behind him, through the view screen, he could see the fleet assembling. 500,000 ships. They filled the space around Earth like stars, each one waiting for his command. 500,000 ships crewed by men and women who had one question burning in their hearts. Why did you kill our people? Sir, his communications officer said, all ships report ready. The fleet is awaiting your orders. Chen Wei-lin looked at the fleet. He thought about his sister standing on her balcony, drinking coffee, not knowing she had minutes to live. He thought about children running through burning streets. He thought about a galaxy that believed humans were weak, that believed humans would simply accept death because a stronger species demanded it. Open a channel to all ships, he said. The communication system activated. 500,000 bridges fell silent, waiting to hear their commander speak. Today, Chen Wei-lin said, his voice steady and calm, we remind the universe that humanity does not forget. We do not forgive, and we do not stay quiet forever. The beings who burned New Providence thought they had destroyed us. They thought we would fade into history, another footnote in their 30,000-year empire. They were wrong. He paused, letting the words settle across the fleet. We have spent 10 years preparing for this moment. 10 years building. 10 years training. 10 years remembering 12 million people who never got to fight back. Today, we fight for them. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when you attack humanity. He turned to his navigation officer. Set course for Volanthi space. All ships, engage hyperspace drives. 500,000 ships activated their drives simultaneously. The space around Earth filled with light as portals opened to hyperspace. One by one, the great warships vanished, jumping across the galaxy toward an enemy that had no idea they were coming. The silent decade was over. Now came the thunder. Station Commander Vethener was bored. He had served at Nexus 7, a border patrol station, for 15 years. Nothing ever happened here. Occasionally, a merchant ship would pass through. Sometimes, a minor species would request permission to enter Dominion space. His job was to check their documents, collect their taxes, and send them on their way. The Volanthi Dominion had ruled this region for 30,000 years. No one challenged them. No one could. Vethener had 12 patrol ships under his command, each one capable of destroying a small fleet. He had never fired a weapon in anger. He expected to retire without ever seeing real combat. Then his sensor officer screamed, "Commander, hyperspace signatures, multiple contacts." Vethener looked up from his desk. "How many?" The officer stared at his screen. His scales had gone pale. His hands were shaking. "Commander, I think the sensors are broken." "Then fix them." "Sir, I have run the diagnostic 3 times. The sensors are working, but the count cannot be right." Vethener walked over and looked at the screen himself. For a moment, he could not understand what he was seeing. The numbers did not make sense. They could not possibly be correct. The screen showed 500,000 hyperspace signatures. "That is impossible," he said. "The entire Dominion Navy has 80,000 ships. No one has 500,000 ships. No one." The signatures grew stronger as the fleet approached. Vethener watched as his screen filled with contacts, more and more appearing every second. It looked like a swarm of insects descending on his station. Then the first ships dropped out of hyperspace. They were massive. The smallest was twice the size of his largest patrol vessel. They had dark gray hulls marked with symbols he did not recognize. Their design was brutal and efficient, built for one purpose: war. They spread out across the space in front of his station, blocking the stars, filling every direction he could see with metal and weapons. "Open a channel," Vethener ordered. His voice was not steady. The communication system activated. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then a voice spoke in perfect Volanthi, translated by some automatic system. "We are humanity. You burned New Providence. We have come to discuss this." Vethener felt his blood freeze. He remembered the report from 10 years ago. A Meyer species in Sector 7G purified, eliminated, forgotten. They were supposed to be dead. They were supposed to be nothing but ash and memory. 500,000 ships hung before him, waiting for his response. "This is Commander Vethener of the Volanthi Dominion," he said, trying to sound confident. "You are trespassing in sovereign territory. Stand down and prepare for inspection, or you will be destroyed." Silence. Then the voice spoke again. "That is not going to happen." Vethener made the worst decision of his life. "All ships, engage the enemy." His 12 patrol vessels surged forward, weapons charging, shields activating. They had never lost a battle. They were Volanthi. They had conquered 100 species. Surely a few hundred ships would fall before their superior technology. The battle lasted. 9 minutes. Human weapons tore through Volanthi shields like they were made of paper. Human ships moved with coordination the Volanthi had never seen, each vessel covering the others, striking from multiple angles at once. Vethener watched his patrol ships explode one by one, transformed into expanding clouds of debris. His station had no weapons capable of fighting warships. He could only watch as the last of his defenders died. When it was over, the human voice returned. "You have lost 12 ships and 600 crew. We have lost nothing. Do you wish to continue this discussion, or do you wish to contact your superiors?" Vethener contacted his superiors. The news reached the Dominion capital in hours. High Hegemon, Ithal, supreme ruler of the 6 species that formed the Dominion, called an emergency council. For the first time in centuries, the council chamber was filled with panic. 500,000 ships, Ithala said. "Explain to me how this is possible." No one could explain. The Volanthi had the most powerful navy in their region of the galaxy. They had spent 30,000 years building it. How could a species they had tried to exterminate 10 years ago appear with a force 6 times larger? "We should attack immediately," Admiral Kethvorin said. He was old now, his scales faded, but he still held influence. "Destroy them before they advance further." "With what?" Another council member demanded. "They have 80,000 more ships than our entire fleet, and their weapons appear to be more powerful than ours. Then we negotiate. Offer them territory, resources, anything they want." "They do not want territory," Ithal said quietly. She had read the message from Nexus 7 carefully. "They want something else. They want us to answer for what we did." Meanwhile, the human fleet advanced. Admiral Chen Weilin had given strict orders. They destroyed every military installation they found: shipyards, defense platforms, weapons depots. But they did not touch civilian populations. They did not bomb cities. They did not burn worlds. "We are not them," Chen repeated to his commanders. "We prove that every day. Every decision we make. We came here for justice, not genocide. Do not let me hear of a single civilian casualty." The fleet pushed deeper into Dominion space. Species that had lived under Volanthi rule for millennia watched in amazement as the mighty empire crumbled. Human ships passed their worlds without firing a shot, focused entirely on military targets. Word spread. The humans were not conquerors. They were not destroyers. They were something else. something the galaxy had never seen. After 3 months, the human fleet reached the Dominion capital. Ethevara Prime was a beautiful world, home to 4 billion Volanthi. Its orbital defenses were the strongest in the Empire. Thousands of weapons platforms surrounding the planet. The human fleet stopped just outside weapons range. Then a transmission request arrived. High Hegemon Ithila accepted. The face that appeared on her screen was human, a male, middle-aged, with dark eyes that held no anger, no hatred, only cold and patient certainty. "I am Admiral Chen Wei-Lin," he said. "Commander of the United Earth Fleet. You know why we are here." Ithila nodded slowly. "You are here because of the colony we destroyed." Her name was New Providence. 12 million people lived there. One of them was my sister. Chun's voice remained steady. "I have come to read you their names. All 12 million of them. And then I have come to discuss what happens next." Ithila looked at the fleet surrounding her world. She looked at the weapons that could reduce her planet to glass in hours. She understood finally what the Volanthi had awakened when they burned New Providence. "What do you want?" she asked. "Justice," Chun replied. "Something your empire has never given to anyone. But you are going to give it to us. And then you are going to give it to every species you have ever wronged." He leaned forward slightly. "Let us begin." The human fleet did not fire on Ithevara Prime. They did not need to. 500,000 warships surrounding your capital sent a message more powerful than any weapon. The message was simple. We could destroy everything you have built. We choose not to. But you will listen to what we have to say. Admiral Chen Wei-Lin made his first demand, a trial. Every officer who had participated in the attack on New Providence would be surrendered to human custody. They would face judgment, not in secret, but broadcast across the entire galaxy. High Hegemon. Ithila had no choice but to agree. The trial took place on a space station constructed specifically for this purpose, orbiting halfway between the human fleet and the Dominion capital. Representatives from dozens of species came to watch. Most had never seen the Volanthi answer for anything. For 30,000 years, the Dominion had done whatever it wanted. The idea that someone could hold them accountable seemed impossible. Yet here they were. Admiral Cathvorin entered the courtroom in chains. He was 87 years old now. His scales faded to a dull gray, but he still walked with pride. He had served the Dominion his entire life. He had purified 17 worlds. New Providence was simply one more entry in a long list. He did not understand why the humans considered this a crime. The human prosecutor was a woman named Maria Santis. She had lost her husband and 2 children on New Providence. When she stood before the court, her voice was calm and clear. On the morning of June 15th, 2347, 40 Volanthi warships entered orbit above the human colony of New Providence. They did not attempt communication. They did not issue warnings. They did not offer the 12 million inhabitants any chance to surrender, evacuate, or negotiate. They simply began firing. She activated a holographic display. The recording from Commander Sarah Chun played across the courtroom. Everyone watched as Haven burned. They heard the screams. They saw children running through streets that melted beneath their feet. They witnessed the final moments of 12 million lives. "This is what the defendant calls purification," Santis said. "We call it murder. Mass murder on a scale that has no name in human language." She turned to face Cathvorin directly. "What do you have to say for yourself?" Cathvorin stood slowly. He looked at the human woman, then at the assembled representatives from across the galaxy. "I followed the laws of my people," he said. "For 30,000 years, the Volanthi have protected this region of space by eliminating threats before they could grow. Your species was expanding. You were building ships. In 1,000 years, you might have challenged us. I did what any Volanthi commander would do. I removed the threat. He showed no regret, no shame, no understanding of what he had done wrong. You asked me to apologize for protecting my people, he continued. I will not. I acted according to the laws of nature. The strong survive. The weak are eliminated. This is how the universe works. Maria Santos shook her head slowly. No, she said. That is how your universe worked. We are here to build a different one. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Witness after witness testified about the attack, about the lives lost, about the civilization erased in 6 hours. Sensor data proved that the colony had no significant weapons. Communications records showed that the humans had tried desperately to make contact, to negotiate, to understand who was attacking them. The Volanthi had simply ignored them. In the end, the verdict was unanimous. Voran and his surviving officers were guilty of crimes against humanity, a phrase that now entered Galactic legal language for the first time. The sentence surprised everyone. Admiral Chun Wei-Lin had argued against execution. Death is too easy, he told the court. They killed 12 million people and felt nothing. If we kill them, they die as soldiers who served their empire. That is not justice. Instead, Voran and his officers were sentenced to life in service at a memorial station. The station would orbit New Providence, the dead world they had created. For the rest of their lives, they would maintain the memorial. They would greet every human visitor. They would recite the names of the dead, every single name. All 12 million of them. You wanted us to be forgotten, Chun said to Voran as the sentence was announced. Instead, you will spend your remaining years making sure we are remembered. You will say their names until the day you die. Voran, for the first time, looked uncertain. Death he had prepared for. This was something else. The trial ended, but humanity's work was not finished. Chun met with High Hegemon Ethala to discuss the future of the Dominion and its relationship with humanity. You have the power to destroy us, Ethala said. Why have you not done so? Chun looked at her for a long moment. Because we are not you, he said. We did not come here to conquer. We did not come here to rule. We came here to make sure what happened to us never happens to anyone else. He presented humanity's demands. They wanted recognition as equals. They wanted a seat on the Galactic Council. They wanted mutual defense treaties with any species that requested them, and they wanted the Dominion to change. No more purifications, Chun said. No more attacking young species because you fear what they might become. From now on, any species you encounter must be contacted peacefully, must be given the chance to speak for themselves, must be treated as potential friends, not potential threats. Ethala studied the human admiral. You ask us to abandon 30,000 years of tradition. Your tradition killed 12 million of my people. Yes, I am asking you to abandon it. And if we refuse? Chun gestured toward the window, where the human fleet still waited in orbit. Then we will have a different conversation. Ethala was silent for a long time. She thought about her empire, her people, her history. She thought about the ships surrounding her world and the weapons they carried. She thought about a species that had been nearly exterminated and had returned stronger than anyone imagined possible. Finally, she spoke. We will agree to your terms. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The mighty Volanthi Dominion had been humbled. Not destroyed. The humans have been very careful about that. But humbled. Forced to change. Forced to answer for what they had done. Species that had lived in fear of the Dominion for millennia began to hope. Perhaps the galaxy could be different. Perhaps there was a place for the small and the weak. Perhaps not every powerful species would use that power to destroy. On the last day before the human fleet departed, Chen Wei-Lin visited New Providence alone. He took a shuttle down through the atmosphere, landing on the glass plains where Haven had once stood. The surface was silent. Nothing grew here. Nothing lived. The ground was smooth and glassy, melted by plasma fire and cooled into a permanent scar. In the distance, he could see the first memorial markers that human teams had begun installing. Chun walked until he found the spot. He had calculated it carefully from the old maps, the location of the defense headquarters where his sister had made her last stand. He knelt on the glass and placed a small, holographic projector on the ground. When he activated it, Sarah's face appeared, smiling, frozen in a moment from happier times. "We did it, Sarah," he whispered. "Not just revenge, justice, real justice. The kind that changes things." He stayed there for an hour, alone with the memory of his sister and 12 million others. Then he returned to his ship and rejoined his fleet. The remembrance turned toward home. Behind it, 500,000 ships followed. They had come to the Dominion as a force of vengeance. They left as something more, something the galaxy had needed for a very long time. They left as proof that power did not have to mean cruelty. That strength did not have to mean destruction. That a species could suffer the worst the universe had to offer and still choose to be better than those who had hurt them. Humanity was going home. But they would not forget. They would never forget. 50 years had passed since the human fleet returned home. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The 500,000 warships did not disband. They evolved into something new, the Terran peacekeeping force. Humanity had learned a hard lesson about what happened when the weak had no one to protect them. They decided to make sure no species ever learned that lesson the same way. The Kreth were the first to ask for help. They were small beings, covered in bright feathers, known throughout the galaxy for their beautiful songs and their vast libraries of knowledge. The Volanthi had nearly wiped them out 3,000 years ago, reducing their population from billions to a few million, refugees hiding on barren moons. When they heard what humanity had done to the Dominion, the Kreth sent a message to Earth. They asked for protection. They asked for a chance to rebuild. Humanity said yes. Within a decade, the Kreth homeworld was restored. Human engineers helped them build new cities. Human ships patrolled their borders. Human teachers worked alongside Kreth scholars to preserve their ancient libraries. For the first time in 3,000 years, Kreth children grew up without fear. The Mundari came next. They were silicon-based beings who lived in the hearts of asteroids, slow-thinking, long-living, patient beyond human understanding. The Volanthi had enslaved them as industrial labor, using their natural ability to process minerals. Millions of Mundari had spent centuries trapped in mining operations, never seeing the stars. Humanity freed them. It took 20 years to locate all the Mundari slaves scattered across Dominion space, but humans did not give up. Every single one was found. Every single one was given a choice: stay and work freely, or return to the asteroid fields their ancestors had called home. Most chose to go home, but some stayed. They wanted to learn about these strange creatures who had fought an empire to right old wrongs. They wanted to understand why humans cared about species they had never met. "You did not know us," an elderly Mundari said to a human diplomat. "We are not like you. We do not look like you. We do not think like you. Why did you help us?" The diplomat, a young woman named Elena Vasquez, thought carefully before answering. "Because no one helped us," she said. "When the Volanthi came, we were alone. We had to save ourselves. But we decided that if we ever had the power to help others, we would. We would be the protectors we wished we had." The Mundari considered this for a long moment. "Then we will remember," they said. "For 1,000 years, we will remember what humanity did for us." The Providence Accords were signed 15 years after the trial of Kethvorin. They were the first truly galactic laws, agreed upon by every major power. The rules were simple. No species could be attacked without first being contacted. No world could be destroyed. No civilization, no matter how young or weak, could be denied the right to exist. Humanity enforced these rules. When a minor power in a distant sector tried to purify a newly discovered species, 300 human warships arrived within a week. There was no battle. The aggressor looked at the fleet, remembered what had happened to the Volanti, and surrendered immediately. "The humans are coming" became a phrase that echoed across the galaxy. For some, it meant fear. For many more, it meant hope. The Volanti dominion changed slowly. The old generation, raised on traditions of conquest and purification, struggled to accept the new order. But their children grew up in a different galaxy. They learned about New Providence in their schools. They studied human history and human culture. They asked questions their parents could not answer. A young Volanti named Sithara became famous for her writings about interspecies relations. She argued that the Dominion's old ways had been not just cruel, but foolish. By destroying young species, they had destroyed potential allies, potential friends, potential sources of new ideas and new perspectives. The humans proved that a species we dismissed as primitive could surpass us in a single generation, she wrote. How many other species did we destroy who might have done the same? How much knowledge, how much beauty, how much possibility did we burn because we were too afraid to let others grow? Her words caused controversy. Some Volanti called her a traitor, but many more listened. The galaxy was changing, and those who could not change with it would be left behind. 50 years after the war, a ceremony was held on New Providence. The glass plains had been partially restored. Human scientists had found ways to bring life back to the wounded soil. Small gardens grew in the shadows of memorials, green patches spreading slowly across the gray landscape. Representatives from 100 species gathered there. Humans stood beside Volanti. Kreth sang memorial songs while Mundari stood in patient silence. Dozens of other species, some of whom had been enemies for millennia, came together to remember what had been lost and celebrate what had been built. Admiral Chun. Wei Lin was 87 years old. His hair was white, his face lined with age, but his eyes were still sharp. He stood before the central memorial, a pillar of crystal containing the names of all 12 million dead, and looked out at the crowd. 50 years ago, he said. His voice amplified across the gathering. I stood on this same ground and promised my sister that we would find justice. I thought justice meant punishment. I thought it meant making our enemies pay for what they did. He paused, looking at the faces before him, human and alien, young and old, former enemies standing side by side. I was wrong. Justice is not about punishment. Justice is about making sure it never happens again. Justice is about building a galaxy where no species has to fear extinction simply because they are young or weak or different. Justice is about proving that strength can be used to protect, not just to destroy. He smiled an old man smile, tired but peaceful. We have not finished that work. We will never finish it. But every day, every year, every generation that passes without another New Providence proves that we are moving in the right direction. And that is enough. After the ceremony, Chun walked alone through the memorial gardens. The sun was setting, casting orange light across the glass fields. He felt his age in his bones, but he also felt something he had not felt in 50 years, peace. A young Volanti approached him nervously. She was perhaps 18 years old, her scales a bright green that marked her as barely past childhood. She stopped a few feet away, uncertain. Admiral Chun? She asked. May I speak with you? Chun nodded. Of course. The young Volanti hesitated. I have studied the war. I have read everything about New Providence and what my people did. I wanted to ask. She stopped, struggling to find the words. Do you still hate us? Chung looked at her for a long moment. He saw her youth, her uncertainty, her hope. He thought about the officers who had burned his world, and he thought about this young person who had had nothing to do with it. I hated the ones who killed my sister, he said finally. But you did not kill her. You were not even born when it happened. You are here because you want to. Make sure nothing like this ever happens again. He extended his hand, a human gesture that had spread across the galaxy in the years since the war. That makes us all eyes, he said. And maybe someday, friends. The young Volanthi looked at his hand. Then, slowly, she reached out and took it. Around them, the gardens of New Providence grew quietly in the fading light. Humans and aliens walked together among the memorials, talking, laughing, sharing stories. The dead were not forgotten. They would never be forgotten. But the living were building something new from the ashes of the past. Humanity had answered fire with fire. They had proven that they could not be destroyed, could not be ignored, could not be dismissed. But in the end, they had chosen to build rather than burn. They had chosen to protect rather than conquer. They had chosen to offer friendship to the children of those who had tried to exterminate them. That, more than the 500,000 warships, more than the weapons and shields and engines, was the true strength of humanity, and the galaxy would never forget it. Far above New Providence, a small station continued its eternal orbit. Inside, the last surviving officers of the attack crew maintained the memorial systems. Every day, they recited names. Every day, they remembered what they had done. Every day, they watched the gardens grow on the world they had tried to kill, and life went on.